Hi, welcome back to The Better It Gets. Today I've got my dear brother, Derek Smith, and this is by far the most epic set that we've had for the podcast. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yay. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce Derek and we will flow from there. Today's guest is a multifaceted visionary, filmmaker, and explorer of consciousness with a story that spans continents and deep spiritual awakening. Born in Puerto Rico, he grew up in a family that moved frequently, giving him a global perspective and fluency in 3 languages. He picked up a camera at age 7 and committed to a lifelong career in filmmaking with a vision to tell stories that go beyond the surface. His journey into spirituality began at the age of 10 when he and his father started practicing Buddhist meditation, while his mother and grandmothers rooted him in Catholic traditions, setting the stage for his own unique spiritual path. At 14, he began working with plant medicines, an experience that led him to a profound moment of meeting God through his first peyote ceremony at 15. Always a romantic at heart, his journey took him on a path to explore Tantra and the divine masculine, influenced by both his romantic ideals, like Disney movies, and the challenges of toxic masculinity. This is my favorite part. Through mistakes and realizations, he discovered the essence of what it means to truly be a man by discovering and balancing polarities. You!
Ooh, that is one hell of an intro. I feel honored. Thank you.
Welcome, Derek.
Thank you.
I would love to know where your journey started with psychedelics and how psychedelics, filmmaking, and divine masculinity have all interwoven for you through your journey of exploration, because I know your passion for all of it.
Thank you. That's a wonderful prompt to start with. Well, like you said, I grew up all over the place, and it was on Maui where I moved to Maui from Chile. My mom's Chilean, and I came from like a very conservative kind of like private school culture. And when I got to Hawaii, I was thrown into the public school system, which was ranked like 49th. And as a white kid, I really had to like toughen up. So what I found was, learning to be in nature, learning to surf, learning to fight. But then somehow I made a friendship with like all the kids whose parents were like the pot growers, like the ex-hippies that had moved to Maui. So very young, I always wanted to explore, out of peak experiences and things, to get us out of the day to day. So marijuana was amazing. Cannabis was a great ally for me. So it started there, and having these kind of spiritual experiences in the surf and hiking and camping with weed. But it was really the psilocybin that like sent me to a whole nother level.
At what age?
I was 14 when I had my first psilocybin experience. And what was cool about Maui was that you could just go to these particular cow pastures, and like my homies showed me, like, this is how you find mushrooms. After it rains, the sun comes out, and this is where you find them. You open up a bunch of grass, you tap the top of the mushroom so the spores fall into the cow patties so they can grow later on.
Quick psilocybin tutorial.
Yeah. And, to be honest, we didn't really know what a dose was. We would just pick a ton, eat a bunch, and then laugh and play in the rivers and on the beaches. And but on Maui, there's a crater called Haleakala. It's this beautiful crater that's huge. And every spring break, we would do a 3-day hike through the crater, where our parents would drop us off on the rim. We'd hike down the first day. Then the second day, we'd cross the crater. And we were talking all these different scapes that looked like the moon and Mars and yellows and purples and reds and volcanic rocks. And then the third day, there's this thing called the Kaupo Gap, which is a break in the crater. And that's where the lava would flow down the other side of the island. So we'd hike through there, and our parents would pick us up. So the reason I bring this up was it was our 3rd time in the crater. And one of the kids got these things called cubensis mushrooms, which were, grown in a kit. And we looked at them, and they were tiny, and there was just a few of them. So we're like, we're not going to get high off these. So like, we'll just split them up 4 ways and eat them. Turns out we all ate a quarter each, and they were way stronger than the mushrooms we picked in the field. So that's 7 grams. And I remember at one point, I remember my mom said, hey, like when you're up there, don't do anything stupid, and At one point when I was peaking really hard and was very afraid and thought I might die, I was crawling through, the volcanic pumice stones that have little bubbles in them. So all of these little stones were turning into faces, and they're like, "No, mate, you've got this. You're going to live." I don't know where that Aussie voice came from, some guardian angel or priest. But I remember sitting there and meditating after, and I met God. Like every question I had ever had in my lifetime, I had the answer to. So then all these stories of, the girl on the bus that was trying to convert me every day, who I had a crush on, she was the daughter of a pastor. None of that made sense to me anymore. Going to church didn't make sense. I told my family, like, I can't do First Communion. I can't take the body of Christ in me because I talked to God directly. And it seemed very boisterous as a young man. But that was really the point where there was more to psychedelics than just having a good time with my homies.
Beautiful. And I love that this is our backdrop right now. This is so psychedelic.
It's a very psychedelic Atlantean orgy type energy.
Totally.
And, I want to be invited to that.
Right.
Party.
The sacred sexuality, the psychedelia of it, all of it. I mean, just kind of speaking into that, I mean, it's beautiful that psychedelics are, they were your bridge out of Catholicism and that whole framework, because a lot of people who come to me and a lot of people that I work with have a lot of church trauma, but have always felt this, I know there's something else. I know there's something bigger, but things like psychedelics have been demonized, and they're like the spawn of Satan or whatever. And you got to naturally grow up in the wild pretty much and discover it for yourself. And then your dad, where did your dad come into this with Buddhist meditation, kind of helping you steer that direction even more?
Yeah, my dad was a black sheep in the sense that he grew up in a very Catholic family too, but he had found a way to kind of seek spiritually, all these different things. And he always told me, he's like, "Derek, I don't want to be your dad, I want to be your friend." So I could come to him with any questions, whether it was about girls or asking him like, "Hey, I want to eat these mushrooms, what do you think?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not saying that I did, but if you do, be in nature, set and setting and drink orange juice," or whatever it may be. So one of my best memories of my father was he had an office in every house that we had lived in, and he had all these books, and I'd come in and hang out because he'd be playing Indian flute, and the books were really interesting. I'm like, "Hey," the cover, I'm like, "Who's the elephant with all the arms?" And he'd say "Oh, that's Ganesh, and this is Hinduism, and this is the cycle of samsara." "Okay, who's the fat guy laughing?" He's like, "Oh, that's Buddha, and he found enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. He meditated, he found his own way." Who's the guy with all the light coming out of his face?" He's like, "Oh, these are Carlos Castaneda books, and they're shamans, and they work with plant medicines to find the visionary state." So he is the reason why I got into a spiritual path when I was very young, and I owe so much to him. It's almost like a head start in a way. But I was really a spiritual seeker, and he really helped that. So he was a devout Zen Buddhist. So when we were young, instead of we'd pray in church, and I just didn't get it with all the Latin verbiage and everything. I just didn't understand it. But when we dropped into meditation, he would talk us through breathing and visualization and things. So I got into meditation practice very, very young. And so when I experimented with psychedelics, I would go to him and ask advice. When it was meditation, I'd ask for him for advice. And then eventually it became with women. I asked him "Hey, with girls, hey, what's your advice?" He goes, "Listen," and this was a little later, but he goes, "Do you want to last longer in bed with women?" And I'm like, "Of course." He goes, "This is what you need to do." And he taught me a tantric practice. Wow. He goes, "Masturbate to 75% and then stop, and then hold that energy."
So he's teaching you semen retention.
He taught me semen retention when I was barely producing semen.
Wow.
So he got me and started on all these things very young, and it was very influential in my life. Beautiful. So I owe him a lot. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, this is the cool place to start. And for anyone listening that's like, "Oh, what's semen retention?" We can maybe talk about that too. It's kind of what it sounds like. It's the practice of retaining your semen so that you can circulate it through your body, not release or be able to hold it for longer and longer amounts of time. But some men practice it. They'll have intercourse and they hold their semen the entire time, and they'll see how much they can get pushed to that edge, right? And hold their chi.
Yeah. And it was, in the beginning, it was for that purpose. And then eventually what I started to find out was my whole demeanor with women changed. In the beginning, I thought well, if I don't ejaculate, I'm going to get nervous like a dog in heat, like, you know, like I'm going to want to like fuck and have sex. But then I realized like, no, it's like when I was releasing, there was a point where I was watching porn every night and just jerking off to go to bed, just to release, you know? And then when I started retaining, I started noticing that not only did it help me with women, but my health changed. I would jump out of bed quicker. I wasn't in a desperate mode to have sex. It was more like, no, I can have it when I want it kind of energy.
So you had mastery and sovereignty over your chi.
Yes.
Over your life force.
It made
instead
a
of the
huge
way it
difference.
spills out or it starts to crave porn, and then you go into this kind of like, it can be like an addictive cycle to just get that release.
100%.
And then it also distorts your own ability to relate to sexuality in a sacred way.
You nailed it, 100%. The dopamine, it's not a healthy dopamine when you're releasing every night to porn in a fantasy that is not aligned with what true lovemaking is. And there's the chi energy, and there's also the jing energy as well. So the jing is more that sexual energy that, and what's cool about when you start diving deeper with Montauk Chia and the Taoist and the Tantrics both have their own methods of teaching this. But I heard of this book called The Multi-Orgasmic Man. And I was like, I didn't know a man could have an orgasm without ejaculating. So what it was is very much like the same techniques, but you also, it's channeling your energy, just like the Kundalini method or Joe Dispenza. You bring it up your spine, you tighten up your perineum and your anus, and then you push that energy up into your head, and then you circulate it. And then it took a while, but then eventually I did experience the multi-orgasmic state without ejaculating, and it feels kind of like a whippet or like DMT. It's like a full body thing, and I know women have various different types of orgasms, so it was the first time I had something very different. And of course, with a partner, it's more difficult. You have to have someone that's willing to go into the deep waters with you and to be able to understand your energy and to help you edge. And you know how it is. We get in the moment of passion, and so it's this kind of fun dance.
Yeah, totally. It's such a different experience when you're in it with yourself and you're learning these energetics. I remember there was a Montauk Chia book that I read, and I think he was referring to the Jing, or he says the woman is, I think it's a green dragon and the man is a white tiger. There's something around these two frequencies. And when a man ejaculates, he's spilling his seed, he's spilling his life force. You know, and when a woman ejaculates, our yoni literally like drinks it back up.
Yes.
So we are energized
Yes.
by our orgasm, whereas men are depleted oftentimes by their orgasm, which is why men want to fall asleep. They have sex and they're like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah. It's just all that energy is going out, and all that, the semen that you creates life in the portal that is, the pussy. So women are, feminine's receptive, the male is more proactive. And, but that's part of the mastery too, is if you're with the right energy and the right woman, you actually do, for a man, the goal is to feel energized after sex.
Right.
And, it happens sometimes, it doesn't happen sometimes. Everything goes into play, what you eat, your exercise, your stress levels, but it's
How much
definitely
you slept,
all those things. That's why women, it's easy for them to have multiple orgasms and to keep orgasming, it's quite beautiful.
Well, I love talking about this on the topic of maleness, because, the channeling that sexual energy up and through and feeling it as the light body versus the pouring outward, right? So many people, when they think about sex, they think about sexuality moving outward, right?
Yes.
To like get something or get someone, instead of the orbital energy of revivifying your own system and energy body and understanding your own sexual blueprint. But just like you said, like to have that practice by yourself is so powerful, and to bring it up. So it's going through the chakras. So I'm curious, like, what are some things that you can offer men who are like, I want to understand my sexual sovereignty, my blueprint, so that when I'm with a lover, I can actually meet her in the cosmicness?
Beautiful. Really good prompt. So I guess the journey started, I just wanted to be a better lover. Watching movies, I'm a romantic at heart, and I've failed so many times. I've had so much heartbreak, and in college it was very much divide and conquer, the taking energy. How many women can I sleep with? Take. But then when I realized the real gift became giving, and then I started find like, I'm pretty vanilla, to be honest, but like my kink is really how many orgasms, how much pleasure can I give this woman? And that becomes the path of the pleasure dom. But eventually it became the path of what I call the savage gentleman. And what that is we're all savages inside. We're primal. We're animalistic. So everyone has that lust and that energy. But the gentleman, the gentle man, is able to hold that energy and not let it control him. He controls it so it doesn't control him. So, chivalry is very important, to be able to, and Poppy was on your podcast and she talked about this, connecting the cock energy to the heart and the mind. And your friend Kelsey Kazarian talks about the men bringing in provision, and Everett talked about the pillars. So you've been talking about this a lot of our peers, and it's very much in the circles in the collective right now. But it is to hold, through tantric practices and through the way you live your life, what I found that this Jing energy starts to pour into everything I do. The masculine energy is very, it's a doing energy. So if you're not releasing it constantly through sex and depleting it starts to pour into everything, your friendships, your exercise, your creative energy into your work. So I think, balancing out this gentle way of holding the feminine, of being gentle, but also ravishing them when it's time to be primal. I think there's a beautiful dance and practice there. But if I'm going to keep it very simple, porn's very, very bad. Porn is a disease, and lay off the porn. Don't ejaculate that often. There's a chart in some of these books where, according to your age, how long you should edge for, and for me at 45, it's about 9 days. And what I notice is not only do I feel more energized, more motivated and everything, but then women start treating me different. Like in my previous relationship.
Because you're containing.
Because you're containing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
and
holding
women
it.
are attracted to containment.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the containment of this is my boundary, this is my edge. I've got mastery over myself. I've got mastery over my own energetic. Women can feel safe with that, which means that she's going to feel safe for you to lead her, right? A woman's not going to be led by you if she doesn't feel safe by you. And she can't feel safe with you if you don't have some level of containment over your energy. If you're in a space, your energy's leaking out, you're there's a hot girl over there and your energy's kind of moving toward her. Women are so omnipresent and have such diffuse awareness that they can feel when your energy's leaking out, or when you've watched porn. I remember, my fiance, Teddy, he doesn't watch porn anymore. He used to. And when we got back together over the past 2 years, there was one time where we were having sex and I was scared. I was like, I'm not enjoying whatever. It was energetically, I was like, there's something dark. And then he admitted to me he had watched porn earlier that day. Wow. And he just kind of just wanted to feel into what it would be like to watch it again. And after he received my reflection of that energy, he fully cut it out.
Wow. See, that is so powerful. What I'm learning from what you're saying is women are way more aware of these energetics than men are. And they can pick up on it. It's like that whole thing. If you have leaky sexual energy, a woman's like, God, they feel that smell of desperation.
Yeah.
And so when I was dating Alina, my ex, she was privy to my practice. And there are days, she asked me one day, she goes, hey, what day are you on? I'm like,
I love that.
I'm on day 8. And she's like, her girlfriend just came over. And I'm just in my PJs, unshaven, just not even presentable. And her friend's like, I don't know what it is about Derek today, but he's looking sexy. And it was the Jing. It was the Jing energy. I was on day 8 or 9. Yeah. I was at the end of that.
Well, because you're retaining your life force too.
Life force.
And you're being intentional about the way that you're wielding your wand of light. Right? That's what lingam is, the Sanskrit word for penis, and it means wand of light.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then yoni is sacred space, right? So when the wand of light goes into the sacred space, there is an alchemical reaction. There's an alchemical, energetic, pulsation that happens. So when we're being mindful about the way we're wielding this energy, and just like you said, when it's heart and yoni coherence, heart and lingam coherence, that is what I call erotic innocence.
Ooh.
It's
wow, you got all these terms.
The innocence. I just led a little activation on this at Everett's event, Phoenix Rising, melting into your erotic innocence. And there's the inherent innocence of eroticism is that it is what created all of us.
Yes.
It is pure creational power and potency. And when we understand how to wield that as feminine embodied, masculine embodied, right? You are this penetrative force. However, you also get to have that containment. I love the savage gentleman because it's like, we want your savage and we want your gentleman. Like those two pieces for me is like everything. I want to know that you can fuck shit up.
Yes.
I want to know that like the doors are locked at night. You're protecting. You've got us, right? That you have boundaries. Okay, this was really hot the other day when I came to, and this goes into everything we're talking about.
Beautiful.
The divine masculine. Our friend, just for the audience's sake, our friend Calibri, who you actually introduced me to, her partner had a birthday party for her, and it was all women, and it was a surprise party, and the women walk in, and there are men there waiting to wash our feet and massage them. And I come over, and I sit down, and then I'm told, like, you know, he reached out to all of our partners to see if it was okay if men touch our feet, which that in and of itself, that
Huge.
is a beautiful representation of the divine masculine. Consent,
Yes.
attunement, intentionality,
Yes.
protection of the feminine, and connection to the men, right, of the women.
Amazing.
Like respect of men who respect men.
Mm.
And my part, and Teddy goes, only Derek can massage your feet. And when he came home, I actually wrote him this card, and in the card I was like, thank you for your boundary. That was hot. That was hot to know that you knew what man you respected enough to touch my feet. And not only did you respect, like, you made it known. You had a clear directive, you had a clear boundary, and you spoke it. So that, again, that containment. And then also the influence that you have in pretty much, I mean, like all of your friends' lives. I know that you've had this influence in our life is this pillar of safety. And like, you know, swagger, safety. I'm like,
I like that, swaggered safety.
yeah, and that men just feel this safety with you and this respect with you, and women feel safe with you. And so, yeah, I would love to also hear how that's translated in the way that you give, and please go into pleasure dom some more.
Okay.
With women.
Sure, it's one of my favorite topics. First off, thank you for that compliment. I have learned that the best compliment a man can ever get these days is, I feel safe with you. You know, I didn't realize, it was the Me Too movement that really hit me hard. I didn't realize how many women are actually living in fear. And toxic masculinity is rampant because we've forgotten that, we've just forgotten how the patriarchy has really done a number on women. And it's I feel it's changing. You know, there are a lot of men rising to the occasion and finding their kingdom. But it's really important because you don't want to throw away your primal nature. You don't want to throw away the savage, and that's sort of what's happening. Men are becoming very effeminate because they feel like, okay, toxic masculinity is bad, so they think masculinity is bad. So let me be more effeminate. Let me not take action. And women are becoming very strong in their masculine.
Let them take the lead. The women.
Yes.
Yeah,
so women are, because like I had a conversation today with a friend of mine who's going through stuff with her man or just men that she'd been around, and none of them are taking the lead for these hard conversations, and it was really frustrating her. I'm like, sorry that you have to step into the masculine role. But the quote that was told me, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So learn to be strong, learn to protect, learn to fight, but so you don't have to do it. You know, so women can feel safe, so you can lock the door and have safe boundaries and strong boundaries. And yeah, and I guess Teddy knows that I give a hell of a foot massage.
He also said that, yeah.
Yeah, so that was beautiful. And here's the thing, like once you start giving as a man, in the past it was this conquering and taking kind of energy, but then when I realized that, you know, and I had my struggles with polarities and stepping in, I fell into a very feminine role with a hyper masculine ex of mine, and then it was until too late. She wasn't having sex with me, and like everything is beautiful and on the table, but what the fuck is going on? She's like, I'm so masculine, I just don't know, I have to figure it out. But the problem was because she was so masculine, I started getting into my feminine. Yeah. We were living together, and it was like, well, she's working so hard, I'm gonna wash the dishes and walk the dog and do the things and support her fucking dreams. And my purpose as a man kind of fell by the wayside. So she was, even though I thought I was doing everything for her, she was more and more turned off because I wasn't getting after my own purpose, you know, which is crucial. So what I found was after that relationship, I'm like, well, fuck this. I'm gonna just lead, and when I invite someone, I'm just going to pay for everything, and I'm just going to and I've always opened doors, but I'm just going to really lean into my masculinity. And what I found was, it's just the law of abundance. The more you give, the more you receive. And I started to find great pleasure in giving. How can I serve you, Queen? How can I be of service? Knowing my north node and knowing my north star and knowing my purpose, but like also creating room to serve the feminine. Because what I found out, really strong women become an ally. Because if you're leading, they're going to teach you and they're going to support you in how to lead even better, to feel the things you don't feel. Like, you know, if you ask a man, it's like, hey, what do you think? If you ask a woman, it's like, hey, how do you feel? And if you can work together, you can become very powerful, more powerful than anything in a partnership. You know, alone we go faster, but together we go farther. So that started to leak into my my sexual life. It was like I had this turn on about like, well, how many orgasms can I give a woman? And it was kind of an egoic thing, like, I'm doing this. I'm giving you this pleasure. I say when you can have an orgasm. But the only way to do that properly is to listen. It's to create, starting at the first text or getting to dinner, it's creating this trust and this safety and speaking the turn on. And this is why I love ISTA. I never took ISTA, but I'm very familiar with what they teach, the RDBSM. You know, are you familiar with the RDBSM?
I'm familiar with ISTA, but
yeah, the RDBSM is really a modality that if you're going to be intimate with someone, it's like a container. So R is relationship. The first thing you do is you ask, like, are you in a relationship? Are you in poly? Are you single? You know, where are you at? And then you share, like, I am single right now. I'm in sort of a consensual, non-monogamous situationship of sorts. So you cover R. RD, what is your desire? What is your desire in this moment or moving forward? Like if I'm at dinner and it's our first date and it's like, you know what, our energy's good. Like my desire, honestly, is like after this, let me give you a wonderful massage. And if intimacy is open, I'm open to that too. You know, and what is your desire? So RD. RDB. B is boundaries. Boundaries. Like where do you draw the line? For me, I always joke, it's like, yeah, my boundary is I don't want to get pegged. Like no pegging for me.
What does that mean?
Pegging, for all of you out there that know what this is, you probably appreciate Zoe's prompt. It's when a woman puts on a strap on and she fucks a guy in the ass.
Yep,
that's pegging.
Not my vibe.
No, but I know very strong, powerful men that they receive that because they're always in power and they're always
giving,
so masculine.
Surrender.
And instead of making fun, I'm like, actually, you know what? Like, I respect you. I respect you for that. You know, for being honest. And honestly, my boundary would be like, it has to be an energetic match. Like you could have the greatest booty and beautiful eyes and talk the talk, but if your energy is like way off, I found that through the tantric practice that the amount of energy exchanged during sex can linger with you, you know, and it can, of course you have the spiritual or the scientific and chemical biological side of things where the oxytocin comes in and all the neurotransmitters that are released during sex. So boundaries, RDB, boundaries. RDBSM. S is sexual health. A lot of things people don't talk about when they're about to get intimate with somebody. No one really talks about these things like condoms, you know, or like, when was the last time you got checked? Or like, is there anything I should know about? You know, let's just talk about this on the front end. It's incredible when I brought it up to women because they're like, no one ever asks that. In fact, like, you know, I actually have herpes. And like, you know, this is how, if we're going to move forward, this is how we can tackle this. So RDBSM. The last one is meaning. Meaning. What does this mean? Do you want me to send you off in an Uber when we're done? Do you want to keep this as a friendship? Do you want to like raid the fridge for chocolate and have some aftercare and spend the night? Or are you looking for a possible romance or you just want to be lovers? So by setting these things on the front end is something that when I moved to Austin, I was single for the first time in 5 years and didn't realize I was going to be single. So I decided to really dive into the exploration of all things I hadn't done, you know, like a dominatrix or a play party. And then I learned these modalities and I apply them. And I wish I knew this stuff like 15 years ago. It would have been very different for me. So that's kind of like how the path of the pleasure dom came about.
Wow. It's so fascinating because as you're talking about all of this, I'm like, I haven't been single in so long that I don't like that whole world. You know, for me, it was 14 to 18 that I was wild and, you know, I'm super young, but like very promiscuous. Yeah. I actually had to conquer energy with men.
Really?
Where I had my eye on who the next target was and how unobtainable they were. And then I would feel like this rush And then I would go tell the stories to all my friends.
It's very masculine.
It was very masculine. It was this whole thing of like, I know what I want. I'm going for it. I still have parts of that. I know what I want and I'm going for it. However, it wasn't, and I think also for people who are tapped in, women who are tapped into their sexuality really young, men who are tapped into their sexuality really young, there is no crash course on how to wield the most creational, potent fucking force in the universe, right? So we're all just figuring it out. Same with psychedelics. Like I remember at a very young age, I was always like, there's a veil to peek beyond. There's something more than what's here. And so at 14, I started doing psilocybin and ecstasy, and I'd be at school on substances, and I literally, it's like, this is a matrix, and I'm breaking free. And so I think it's really cool that we're talking about all of this for people who have had no language for it, and to kind of give some of these pieces. One of my next questions for you is, what would you have told to yourself, knowing what you know now, to that version of you 15 years ago that you wished would have known what you know now?
That women are as horny or hornier than men. There is a lot of shame around sex. Even though like I had a very different upbringing, there's still residue of shame from Catholicism and Christianity, of thinking, honestly, until I was like 12, I thought every woman was a virgin until she got married. So I remember that was like kind of set me aside from all my friends when all of a sudden I was at 13 and everyone's losing their virginity. I go, wait, no one's waiting until marriage? I got to get on this train and I got to like compete and like find mine and get mine. So it's, to be a giver, not a taker. That'd be something I would say as well. That sex is a sacred act and not just a
notch on your belt.
Not beautiful. Well said. So those are some of the things I would say, and really I was very fortunate. I was raised as a gentleman. Through all the women in my family are sensational, and my dad is amazing. So I'm very lucky. I had the karmic lottery with my family. To continue being a gentleman. There's all the stories of like the nice guys finish last, and it took me a long time to find out the difference between what a nice guy is and a good guy. Even up to like last year, there's certain things I had to tweak in how my exchanges with women and even men for that matter. So those would be some of the things I would tell my younger self.
I love that. Did your family, the women, you say they're sensational, they taught you how to open the doors, how to walk on the right side of the road? Okay, so can we give a little crash course to any man listening to this that did not grow up with that? Because this is something I'm really passionate about. So I am very, very in my feminine and very connected to my masculine. Beautiful. In the way that I know my dharma, I know my purpose, and there's an inner protector in me, especially of the feminine, where like I talk about this on the podcast a lot, but I see that there is a scarcity of good chivalrous men who are actually like tracking the space, making sure that the women are safe, people are safe, opening doors. I know it's like some people would say that might be petty, right? To expect a man to open the door, but there is a spiritual component to it. It's like that saying, men protect in the physical and women are protecting in the spiritual, right? 100%. So to be able to open a door, there's so much symbology in that too. I'm opening this door, right? I'm protecting you. I'm showing you that I'm steps ahead of you.
Yes.
And like, women want to be taken somewhere they can't take themselves. And yes, we can open the door and we can carry the heavy bags and the heavy load. And like how much more and this is the art, is, and what you're saying too, the giving allows her to surrender.
Yes.
It allows her to receive. It allows her to be in this energetic that men can't really cultivate on their own. They can experience and drink it in and sip it through the feminine. And then that's nourishing their nervous system, right?
Yes.
But if men aren't creating that active safety and protection and providership, even in subtle ways, opening the door, taking care of the bill, if you can, of course, don't like put yourself out. But like, these are things that I see a lot of men don't do. I'll be out with like a group of men and none of them are holding the door open. And there's like, there are women, and this is something that and the other piece around knowing that a man can fuck shit up for you, knowing that like in your family household, if something happened, he's on it.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in that protector, provider, like always on guard energy, right? You can actually be there to nurture and to surrender and to, you know, to recharge him in your life force, because you know he's got these things. So that gentleman piece is huge. It's so important. And I'm actively tracking men in communities that are or aren't doing this. And there's no shame. It's just, I really want there to be a broader awareness around chivalry, because it's not dead. It never was. It's life-giving.
Yes. Yes.
It's so polarizing. I remember I had this soulmate. Well, he'll always be a soulmate. We never were in an actual relationship, but this man loved me so unconditionally. We worked together at a restaurant for 2.5 years. He was my boss at one point. Never stepped beyond the line, even though we were both in relationships. He'd be like, oh, maybe in the future we'll be together. And, you know, but he was the first person to show me what it feels like fully to feel like a fucking queen in a man's love and presence. He opened every door, even when we had no romantic connection, paid for everything, like just always made sure I was taken care of. And even beyond that, like if I ever needed anything, like, I mean, there was one time he's like, you want to go get your hair done? Go get your hair done. And he just would show up and pay for it. And he was my best friend, but he never expected me to, it was not transactional. There was nothing transactional about it. It was like my birthday, and he's like, let me take you to get a really, really nice dress, and I don't even expect to be at your birthday party. I just want you to feel like a queen.
Wow.
And I remember he used to like not always like eat the healthiest, and I'd be like, I want you to treat yourself like a king. And he'd be like, I feel like a king when I treat you like a queen.
Boom. That's it.
And that code,
That's
like,
it.
Even though he wasn't the man that I'm marrying, obviously, he imprinted my womb and my soma with a code of kingliness and like unconditional love that I feel like, and it wasn't transactional, and there was such a safety in it. And I feel like that chivalry, like it set the blueprint for me for what the divine masculine is. It's not life-taking, it's life-giving.
Beautiful.
It's really seeing and honoring the feminine. And in that honor, I mean, the magnitude of safety that a woman feels in that kind of energy is like, there's no way to compare it. However, we've got the other piece where when it flips too much to that spectrum, then maybe the savage isn't there, right?
Yes.
The one who can take her and ravish her and show her that like his boundaries aren't to be fucked with.
Yes.
Even with her. Because a lot of the times women will press these little buttons and they'll test. They don't even really realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
But just to take the pulse and have a barometer on how much does he actually have his own back?
Yes.
Does he really like breathe into his backbone? And is he really like a safe, like, you know, safe man because of his savage? So yeah, I love the savage gentleman because those two pieces are like, and then I've also been on the opposite end where I've been with the full on savage.
Yeah, the bad boy.
Yeah, and there's like a little bit of like dangerous allure to it, but there's always like a sense of like not being safe. And that really fucks up the soma of the nervous system for a woman.
Yes.
I remember after being with the last savage, it took me like 4 months and then 6 months of celibacy to like really shake it out of my system because of the level of unsafety I felt in my body.
Wow.
So
to regulate your nervous system.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful and profound share. So boys, everyone listening, you know, opening doors, being a gentleman, chivalry is not weakness, it's actually strength. And there's so much to distill from what you were saying. Where do I go from here? It's so I think what comes up for me is this whole like, you know, the women, why do, you know, for me a long time it was like, well, why I'm offering all these, I'm such a gentleman, I'm so nice, I'm so caring, I'm so this. Why am I being left for the bad boy? Like this guy's toxic. What is it? And it took me a long time to figure out the difference between the nice guy and the good guy. You know, and that is the good guy is good, but he has his strong boundaries. He has his path, he has his purpose, and he will lead. You know, he'll lead, even leading his men into battle. You know, there's that. And what you were talking about earlier, it's provision. What I found that when I started leading and I started being a masculine and I used to come from a scarcity mindset. I feel like I've been very fortunate honing my spirituality, my physicality, my mentality, but it took me a long time to really figure out finance. I was always pretty broke because spiritually bypassing, money's an illusion,
It's
I'm
gonna come to
manifesting,
me.
and I've had a remarkable life, but there was always that part. If you're balanced and you're in your masculinity, you know, energy, or like money is energy. It's like currency is a current of energy. So once I found I made a shift from a scarcity mindset into an abundant mindset. And it was just automatic for me to open doors for women. And most of the time they're like, wow, they're not used to that.
And how did they respond? Like, could you feel a
Yes.
shift in their energy?
Yeah, it was a turn on.
Yeah,
it was a
it's
turn
so
on
hot.
because they're not used to it. And I
Yeah.
came from, you know, living in Chile and with a very, like, etiquette was very important in my family. Like, don't put your elbows on the table. Like, don't speak words that are like hate, you know. So it was really ingrained into us. And of course we rebel and do the opposite and that whole thing. But what I found over time was the more I was chivalrous, the more I gave, the more pleasure I found in giving. In fact, if you're living an abundant lifestyle, what you're doing is the more you give,
Right.
the more you receive. And it's like, it's cliche, but it's actually true. So what I found in serving the feminine, that was the pleasure dom turn on. It's like, how can I serve more? How can I make this experience more? When a woman says, I feel so safe with you, it's like, I've done my fucking job. You know, I've guarded the perimeter to allow the feminine to allow herself to open up and be the storm.
You've
and
provided the containment.
the containment.
Because there needs to be a container for her to unfurl.
Yes.
She cannot if there's not the parameters
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, and and I found it's such a turn on, and it's so appreciated. And the more you can give, the more capacity. And it comes from love. Love is infinite in its capacity to give. You can love your dog or your sister, your mom or your lover all differently, but it's all the underlying substrate of love, which is one of those powerful forces in the universe, eroticism and eros, right? And to be a channel for that and a conduit to that, the analogy is always the flower or the lotus, right? Like when you see a flower and it's just in its bud, water it, allow it to have sunshine, make sure the bugs don't get on it, make sure that, you know, it's safe, because you can't force a flower to open up. You can't force a feminine to open up. It has to do it upon its own when the sunshine is there and when all the elements are correct. And here's the thing, like, you can't just, if you see a flower and you want it, you can't pluck it.
Right.
You kill it.
Yeah.
So instead, allow it to blossom. And then the bee can come in and like do the pollination and do the whole thing. So yeah, that is a beautiful thing. And in learning about what eroticism and eros truly is, a cosmoerotic universe, that eros is actually the magnetism that draws you to a lover. And it draws everything together. It's the energy that keeps the planets in orbit. You can talk about magnetism or gravity or the weak and strong nuclear forces, but at the same time, we call it all these things. But why do we fall in love with certain people and not other people? Why do we love a puppy or a baby or love a sunset and the warmth of the sun on us? There's something very innate and underneath that is eroticism. It's the energy that keeps protons, it's the dance of protons and neutrons and electrons dancing around each other from the microscopic quantum to the macro cosmos. And what's beautiful, and again what I learned from his teachings, was in the cosmoerotic universe, with every single person, everything we interact with, we have a unique eros. Like the eros of Zoe and Derek is unique in the fucking cosmos. Like our friendship and our love is unique. And every single person we engage with, even the bum on the side of the street, we are all connected by this energy. So I think by to kind of wrap this all up, you know, being a gentleman and being chivalrous, there's no weakness in that. But at the same time, like you said, you have to understand that you're a savage. And the dance between being a bad boy and the nice guy is the good man. A man who is strong in his boundaries, knows what he wants out of life, will not put up with anything that doesn't match his mantra or his dharma or his code, you know. And to be able to like have the discernment of a king and knowing like, okay, no, I will not stand for this. These are my boundaries. And in order for me to provide, in order for me to give provision, like, you know, there has to be a certain energetic level.
Right.
You know, and when you create a space for a queen to do that, what you find is you become way more powerful. When the queen supports the king, you're able to do things beyond what you're capable of doing on your own. And the last story I'll end with this little diatribe is everyone knows about the wisdom of King Solomon. the famous King Solomon and the famous wisdom of King Solomon. But what I learned was King Solomon actually wasn't really that wise. What he did was, when he was conquering different areas, or he had this vast kingdom, what he brought was the priestesses and the temptresses and the enchantresses from all these other places. And he had all these women, all these mistresses, all these women in the temple. And the wisdom came from them. Because most cultures in the past were matriarchal cultures. And with the churches, it was just so powerful that we had to, but like the patriarchy had to burn the witches at the stake. So to create a safe provisional space for a woman to, like you said, your soulmate allowed you to become this queen. And he's like, I feel like a king when I make you feel like a queen. And that is the dance I think I'm finding now. It's how much can you serve? And what you find is your capacity is limitless when you do it in eros, when you do it in love.
When you do it in love. Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. I love one piece you said, when it doesn't match your mantra, like in the discernment of the king. Yes. And I feel love is the frequency of abundance. And when you're in love, you're not in scarcity, you're not gatekeeping. Right. And that's
true.
kind of a good barometer. Like, am I gatekeeping? Am I feeling threatened by a person or a situation or whatever? And if I am, or if I'm keeping someone at arm's length for a reason that feels like it's coming from scarcity, I'm not overflowing in love. Because if I'm overflowing in love, it is abundant, and it always comes back, just like you said. And in relationship, to be in that cycling of energy, and that charges eros.
Do you feel that a lot of people are afraid to give their full capacity of love?
Absolutely. Because the capacity at which you give yourself to the frequency of love, allow yourself to open and receive love, is the capacity at which you have the possibility of getting hurt.
That's it.
Whether through something happening in the relationship, adultery, betrayal, the relationship seemingly fizzling out, or death. It's like there are these forces that are unpredictable, and love opens us in such a magnitude that there's no predictability to it. So there is a surrendering to it, and everything that you were just sharing from the feminine's perspective, to open to receive a good man. I find that there are a lot of women on this path that are calling in their king, and then they can't open to him when he arrives.
I've experienced that actually quite often, to be honest.
Because she actually hasn't gone to the depths of her own wound of unworthiness.
Wow.
Of not feeling, whether mostly unconsciously, not worthy of being claimed fully. However, there's this idea that many women carry in our wheelhouse, that they are so ready to be claimed, so ready to be chosen. Right. I'll actually vulnerably speak into Teddy and I, my fiance, for those who don't know, we spent a year and a half in separation because he had to go through his own resurrection process. I call it. It was like Magdalene Christ. He had to go through his own resurrection, his own death initiation unto the boy, unto the parts of him that couldn't commit, couldn't claim, couldn't be husband, couldn't be full king of the kingdom. And my requirements were very clear from day one, and also through our separation. And when we got back together, he did fully claim me, and it took a little bit for my nervous system to fully trust it.
To believe it.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'm going to watch you, and I'm just going to, observe the ways in which you're showing up. And is there integrity? Are your words matching your actions? And is your energy in alignment with what you're portraying?
Was there this feeling of can you hold everything that I am? The women being the storm and the man being the mountain. Can you hold all that I am?
So I think there was testings of that, and he's passed so many of the tests.
Yeah, Teddy.
Yeah, from the very beginning, he was able to hold so much of my range and my grief. And I remember there was one time we were in Joshua Tree, and we had this poetically cinematic cosmic experience. And it was right before my birthday, and I just laid back, and he he knew how to hold me in a way. It was all my weight, where I wouldn't fall, but I could fully surrender back and wail from the depths of my soul whatever needed to come out. It was like lifetimes of grief, and I don't even know where it was coming from. But he had proven in a lot of ways that he could hold my bigness. And when we got back together this time, It was actually more of an experience of me calibrating to the level of devotional masculinity that he had been initiated into.
Wow.
Because I always knew he had the capacity and capability to do it. And it had flirted with me through so many of our cinematic cosmic moments.
Yeah.
However, we would go back to the Matrix, or like our day to day, and he would revert back to this other prototype of himself.
Oh.
So, it's all quantum. And as the feminine,
is.
we can tune into the quantum potentiality, and we can also hold a man into the mold of his kinghood, right? And where we get caught up is sometimes we're trying to either coddle him into it or shame him into it.
Wow, that's so true.
Which is very, very ineffective.
Very.
Right? So he's
That's when
got to
the man
get
will
there.
run.
Exactly. And he's going to get there on his own. So I had to hold the faith that he would get there on his own if it was his fate, if it was his destiny, and if we were fated to be together. And when he did come back around and he was embodying this template of devotional masculinity, everything that I had wanted and journaled about for like years, I had to learn how to calibrate to receive it and meet all of the parts of myself that didn't feel worthy of it, even though I thought I thought I was ready. And even recently, like it's been ever since he put this ring on my finger, the devotion even to the customization of this ring. It's 8 infinity symbols with like these beautiful hand-selected diamonds and a rose carved into the yellow gold band.
So much intention.
So much intention.
Beautiful.
Planned the whole week long of our engagement trip. Movie's coming out soon. It's like a 30-minute film he made of our engagement trip.
Beautiful.
You're going to love it. But that level, and he continues to rise into this template. And my practice now as the feminine, as the woman, is to deepen my capacity to receive it.
Wow.
And so I've gone through a lot of initiations around that. And so I speak into this because that good man template, a lot of women are still undergoing the initiation, whether they think they're ready for it or not, of actually being able to expand their capacity to hold that level of claim.
Wow.
To hold that level of pleasure being given, that giving, right? Because for so many women, our biggest block is our ability to receive.
Wow. You nailed something that I think is so important, and I've seen this and I've experienced it. It's like, hey, again, like what you were saying, it's like, all these women, I want the king, I want all these things, da 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 da. And I feel like there's times where like, I feel like everything you're asking for, I'm showing you through action, through love, through wordage, through direct and clear communication and leading. And then a lot of them fold. And it's like confusing, and it's like, there's a lot to relate there. And what comes up is like, you said, if a man can't hold you, if you can't handle me at my Amy Winehouse, then you don't deserve me at my Beyonce kind of energy, No, there's so much profundity there. And so, I guess, what would be, if you had to say in like a sentence or two, your message to women on trusting the capacity to step into that reception, to receive, because the feminine is receptive. Like
the
we were talking about
feminine is
earlier.
receptive. However, a lot of women are not running their energy through a receptive frame.
Oof, what do you think that is?
Because so many women have been, whether directly or indirectly, programmed to believe that we are the ones who are supposed to give every ounce of ourselves to everyone but ourselves.
Wow.
So we're supposed to show up, and we're supposed to nurture, we're supposed to caretake, we're supposed to give, we're supposed to be the one who remembers all the birthdays, we're the one who, is responsible for everyone's emotions around us, we're the one who's responsible for our man to, get into his whatever, fill in the blank. We feel that we're supposed to constantly be, it's almost like the giving tree.
Yes.
So many women feel like they're supposed to constantly cut off an arm and a leg for the world, for their family, for whatever. And in doing that, we don't know how to receive. A lot of women don't even know how to receive a man opening the door, or paying for the bill, right? Because they've been in survival mode for so long.
Yes.
And so in that process, there's been no ability for her to rest back into her radiance or to actually receive from life and to go layers deeper in her pleasure and in her openness, right? To receive not only a mortal man's provision, but God's provision.
Wow. And I think what comes up for me when you say that, just it's hard and it's challenging for women to learn how to receive. It's the same thing on the flip side for men, not trusting the giving, learning how to give. This is the dance that we're in, and that is chivalry, and that is opening the door. It may be so small and inconsequential on the physical plane of things, but it speaks volumes, you know? And what does God do? God doesn't ask for anything in return. He gives us life. You know, we digest our own food without thinking. Our heart beats for us nonstop. You know, the sun just warms the earth without asking for anything in return. And that is, so the capacity to give and the capacity to receive is limitless.
Yeah.
As long as we surrender into that and trust.
Right. And it's not just about man and woman doing that with each other. Like, I can give to you and you can receive too.
That's true.
You know, and so there's an
The
art
polarity.
to it. There's a polarity, but if we look at like the anatomical function of our bodies and going back to sexuality, a man's lingam is a penetrative force that goes into the yoni, which is a receptive force, all at the base of our being. It's all at our root. It's like the fundamental root, right? Like our like what grounds us to this planet. And they're both different poles in the chakra system. So that's a positive pole. This is a negative pole. If we go up to the heart, a woman's heart is a positive pole, which is why we have breasts.
It's like life-giving
heart nectar, sustenance,
nectar
right? They've been so hypersexualized when these are, you know, these beautiful, life-giving, nutrient-giving, you know, parts of our anatomy that we were given by God. Yeah, and they're all over, right? I love painting naked women. It's my favorite thing to paint. And so actually a piece around that is for women, this is where I love self-pleasure meditation, to learn how to receive her own pleasure.
Important.
With herself.
Yes.
Receive her breath deeper, receive her own pleasure without pulling her energy out for arousal from a man. Because a lot of women will bring men into their arousal space, and then that's how they'll get to a climactic point.
Yeah.
Or they derive their pleasure from the pleasure that he's deriving from their sexuality or their hotness.
Wow.
That's a big piece for women.
That's a huge
we get really turned on by the man being turned on by us or by the feminine in general.
Yes.
Because of the life-giving nature of the feminine. I mean, she is life. She's life force. And when a man can really like be with that and receive it and give to it and understand it, there's something so heavenly about it.
Yeah, it is heavenly. And I think in order for man to be able to hold that, he has to have presence. The male gaze, presence, to be in the moment, to be able to give in a way that is not a transaction, to be able to give. And we were talking about, you know, opening, like you were talking about afraid to open your heart up because of all the wounding and the heartbreak and everything else. Having experienced a lot of heartbreak in my life. In fact, I've had a very non-traumatic life for the most part. So the hardest thing was heartbreak for me. It was like, it would take me months to get over a heartbreak, even if it was just like a 1 week thing. And it was just like, what is it? I'm weak, you know, all these stories. But what I found out later is, you know, the tendency is to retreat and to close your heart off.
Yes.
And that causes other issues, you know. But what I found out was like, okay, well, what am I? I'm a man. And if I want to be a warrior keeps his heart open no matter what. Like to be able to take the arrows, to be able to take the wounding. But like and this happened a few years ago, it's like I will refuse, even in this deep, deep grief, I will refuse to close my heart. You know, that doesn't help me. It doesn't help the world. It doesn't help who I interact with. And I think that was a super valuable lesson because you become stronger. You become stronger with each interaction, and by just loving, you know, then you're not attached to an expectation or a particular outcome.
Right.
All I know in the present moment with, you know, the relationship I'm in now or whatever it may be, it's like I just love, and that feels good. And even if it's not received properly in certain ways, there's always recipients for that love one way or the other.
Yeah, beautiful. And with the heartbreak piece, it's like, okay, on this tantric path of seeing everything as sacred and everything as weaving, how can we ritualize grief and heartache to expand our capacity?
Wow.
To feel, to love, to give and to receive love. And I see that every iteration of heartbreak for people, you know, whether it's losing someone to death or losing someone to the death of the relationship, which feels like the same thing.
It does.
It does.
Wild.
It's insane.
Yeah. I was reading this book called The Smell of Rain on Dust, and so many tears. It's about how the Mayans would deal with grief and how our culture has forgotten about it. Like you go
Yes.
to like a funeral and a lot of people don't even know how to mourn.
Right.
They're embarrassed to like wail, or they're embarrassed to feel the full capacity of grief.
Oh.
But what grief really is love.
It's the love that you felt in connection to whatever that thing is that you feel you've lost, expressing itself.
Yeah.
So when you don't give yourself space and room to do that, you can't experience the gift of your heart breaking open to the magnitude of love that you felt for that person through the grief.
I love that.
And that's initially what it is. It's here to break open the magnitude of your capacity to give and to receive love, so that when the next lover or the person comes along, you've stretched at that length. You're
Beautiful.
probably going to magnetize someone who can meet it. Or
Yeah.
if not, you've sharpened your sword of discernment as the peaceful, loving warrior.
Mm.
But I always say heartbreak is here to break our heart open.
Yeah.
And then we get to ritualize and tend to whatever ways we're supposed to integrate that into the new operating system of our being and of our lovership with life in the world and with God, ultimately.
Yeah.
If we can keep coming back to God. And I'll just like, my grandma passed last year, and it was the most profound experience that I had with grief, where I knew that the gift was in the feeling. And I was like, on the first day of my menstrual cycle, I'm feeling so deeply, and I'm on the airplane and I get the news that she's like in the hospital, and I knew she was going to pass. And I played this song on repeat. I had a scarf over my head because I was like ugly crying, wailing, and I was like, I didn't want to freak people out on the plane.
it.
But that's the thing, is how can you create an environment and a container for you to feel what's coming up when it comes up? Because it's part of what has been so desensitized from our human experience is our exquisite sensitivity, which activates our divinity. Without it, we're walking around on autopilot, and we're numb to the beauty and the preciousness and the love that's here. So as she was passing, I was in a full-blown, maybe week-long ritual with her spirit, and I made an altar for her, and I got to love on her with roses, and I felt every wave. And then called together, we had a Magdalene ceremony where each woman gets in the middle. It's like a ancient temple dance that we do. And you get in the middle, and I think everyone needs this practice, where you get in the middle and you are fully witnessed by the container that's around you as you fully let through whatever is there.
Yeah.
If grief needs to rip through you, if you just lost a loved one, if you just went through heartbreak, if you're moving through some really dark night of the soul, if you can move it through your body, your heart won't close.
Wow.
And you won't feel as much PTSD around the experience, because you've literally somatically, like when deers are traumatized and they like shake it off, right? Like you've moved it, and you've allowed yourself to be the vessel that's moved by it.
Wow. Yeah. I think being witnessed in that space helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I went through Dark Night of the Soul in 2022, where it was, all the things that happened to somebody kind of happened all at once, My dad was dying in Brazil, and he was suffering very bad. And you guys know my relationship with my father. So I was going back and forth, trying to help, just to be there, because I couldn't just not try.
Right.
And all I could really do was go and love, and he was getting worse and worse and worse. The most capable man I knew was paralyzed and suffering through pain. It was awful. And I come back, and then the love of my life is like, we're done. We were living together, and she's like, I have to move on. And in that, it made more sense for her to keep the place that I loved and the yoga studio that we were, I kind of helped her get, and then it was her thing. But that community was gone, and then we had to put our dog to sleep. So it was just a tremendous amount of grief that was like almost unbearable. And a friend of mine, it was finally a time where I decided like, I can't hold this on my own. So I started to actually reach out to people, this whole life of lone wolf and man and older brother and director and holding on my emotions to try to hold this capacity. So my dad finally passed. I was holding his hand, and it was actually quite beautiful, traumatic, but beautiful. But the advice that was given to me that was really crucial was, a friend of mine told me, Derek, what you need to do is you need to grieve, and you need to grieve hard. So it was like, I would think about my dad dying, and then I'm like, well, think about my dog, and then think about the heartbreak, and I just
Bring it all
put
in.
all the gas on that fire and really, really lean into it and really feel everything that comes up, and not to repress a single thing. And it's beautiful on the other side. And what it was, another friend also told me to go, yes, grieve as hard as you can, but there is something powerful about actually giving yourself a deadline for the heavy grieving, where like, instead of like, okay, this is my story and this is what I'm going through, it's like, okay, there comes a point where like, okay, moving forward, what is it that I'm excited about? What is it that I'm looking forward to? What is it that I'm going to transmute with this? And on paper, I recognize a lot of these things. There was that study they did with people that had won the lottery, but also people that had gotten dismembered. You might be familiar with this. But what they found was, 1 year later, if you got like an injury and you lost an arm or a leg, or if you had this jubilation from winning the lottery, that after 1 year, people would actually go back to the homeostasis of how happy they were before the incident.
Wow.
So like no matter how bad it is, no matter how good it is, you know, over some time, the body will find a way to transmute that and come back to homeostasis if you allow yourself to feel the feelings and to not bury them.
Right. Wow. So beautiful. And to do that as a man too. What you're sharing, you know, being, you had to hold it all together, and you're a man who allowed yourself to fully just be obliterated by grief and by the divine provision that was breaking you open to the next cycle and iteration, right? But you're also to deepen your capacity to feel and to attune 100%. And to be, you know, creating visionary films and doing what you do now. So I want to hear more about your filmmaking and what your passion is for media. For the world. Yes,
that is beautiful. And in the grief, it was also this thing to where there's power in the vulnerability. What I found was like, oh, it's if I cry and like I allow people to see my most devastated state, that as a man you think like, well, that's some pussy shit. Like you got to handle your emotions and like be the man. But what I found was the more I leaned into reaching out to people and being very vulnerable in my situation, I found power in that in a way that I hadn't before. And it's interesting about the filmmaking because, you know, I picked up a camera at 7. First, it was like Indiana Jones, like that guy. I want to be him, like the whip and the archaeology and the travel and the women. I'm like, I want to be Indiana Jones. And then what was really interesting was that my grandfather, he had like a VCR that he plugged a camera in. This was in like the late 80s. This was like the first time you could actually film at home. So we had a birthday party, and he's like, we're going to make a movie. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. So he'd record, then he'd stop. Record, then he'd stop. I go, why are you stopping? He's like, no, we're going to piece it all together later. And then it hit me. I was like, whoa. So Harrison Ford didn't memorize the entire script and do it in one take. You know, I didn't know how it worked. So I go, wait a second, you can really change your reality to tell the story of whatever you want it to be. So who made Indiana Jones? Spielberg. Oh, I want to be Spielberg. I want to be the guy that tells the story. So I think I was very lucky, you know, to find a passion and a purpose when I was young, and to have a family that's like, if you want to be a movie maker, be one. So throughout the years, I watched a lot of movies and wrote, and I went to film school, and then I found out about independent film through Robert Rodriguez's book, The 10-Minute Film School, which I read twice, and I decided to drop out of film school because I'm like, I don't want to go the studio system where I'm controlled. I want to do my own thing. And then the Sacred Rebel. And then I remember on MySpace, I saw a video and it was on YouTube. I was like, wait, what, YouTube? You can put videos online? So I don't need a studio or a television network to tell stories and make videos. So I dove deep into the videography to film and tell stories and capture things and edit. And, you know, I would film movies with my friends in the neighborhood as a teen, and found out a way to hook the VCRs together so I could edit them, and then to hook it up to like to music and to put music to it, and to make movies with my toys. So like I found the path early as a storyteller, and I just stuck with it. I just stuck with it throughout all the years as an independent videographer. But also, like, you know, seeing some of my friends that went the studio route who have made money and have their big houses up in Sherman Oaks and in Hollywood. And there's times where I was like, well, why didn't I go down that path? I was very in the path of, in my 20s and 30s, of the hedonist, like spending all my money on the next Burning Man, the next surf trip, the next romantic adventure, or snowboarding. And then now I'm in my 40s, I was like, should I have spent more time in the studio system? But I realized, like, no, because now what is beautiful about this path is I actually have stories to talk about.
I was going to say, you have something to offer.
Yes.
That's dynamic, potent, rich with culture, the culture of everything that you've experienced.
Yeah, there's
the
so many
diversity
stories
of it. There's so much story and potency and substance.
But the one thing that was missing was trauma. And up until that point, my scripts were very weak. They didn't have a backbone to them. It felt like I was trying too hard to make something the audiences wanted to see. And I was mimicking a lot of the action films of the 80s with terrible dialogue and all this killing with no purpose. And then The Dark Night of the Soul happened. And the only thing that was left after I was homeless and dogless and womanless and like all these things, I was sleeping on the floor of my office, realizing that San Diego was done after 17 years. You know, a friend of mine's like, well, what happens in San Diego? Nothing. Like, San Diego's a place where dreams go to die. It's so comfortable and beautiful, and I love San Diego and the beach. But it was just like walking my dog at the beach every day, saying hi to the same 10 people. I was like, how do I actually make these big, ambitious, potent films that I want to make?
There and hated it. She had to go to university. She was like counting the days to leave.
It's not like in LA or New York or even in Austin where there's so much movement and things going on that catalyzes you through your network. Instead of 17 years, it felt like the same year 17 times.
Wow.
So I was on the floor of my office and I was like, well, what's next? Everything I thought that was my life was just shaken and pulled away. I didn't make the decision. The universe is like, you're not following your dharma. I need to shatter you. And this is the Saturn return. And it happens.
Not following your dharma, I need to shatter you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was shattered. But, you know, thankfully I knew because of the tools and my path and everything else, and people have it way worse than I do, that like, okay, you know, this is a restart. But that was the thing that I realized in that office was like, San Diego's done. I don't know what's next. But what I knew was I have the capacity to tell an even better story through pain and grief and suffering, to really know what that is, to be able to tell it. You know, and I sat in stillness for a very long time, in quietness, not trying to force anything, reading a Vedanta book called I Am That. I read it like 3 times, and it said basically that the passage I would read every day when I was in my grief and my ex had moved on with another man very fast, and like all the things was that you don't have, the work is not having to do anything right now. The work right now is to sit in stillness and in silence, to allow the unexpected and the unanticipated to happen. And I didn't know what that looked like. And then I got a call from Austin, and they're like, hey, listen, you know, from Aubrey Marcus, who is my mentor and who I've been a big fan of his podcast and his walk through life and who he is as a man and what he represents. And they called me up and they said, hey, our podcast guy is stepping down. We need to find someone very specific, and your name keeps coming up. Like, we know you have the capacity to tell great stories, and what do you think? Come out to Austin for an interview. And I was like, wow, I never expected to live in Texas as a surfer. I never thought but that felt right. So I flew out, and the interview was basically like Aubrey saying like, oh, I know you, you're hired. So I flew back to San Diego, and my SUV was stolen, and it had the keys to all my storage units and all my Burning Man clothes, my passport,
Your
and
whole life.
Everything. So at that point, I had some thick skin. I'm like, what else you got, universe? Because at this point, like, I know, you know, I was able to hold that grief so well. So moving here has been very incredible. I feel like there's certain people that I've, you know, looked up to and idolized. Robert Rodriguez was just talking about. I got to meet him and go to his house and go to his studios. And another fellow brother of mine, Ben Stewart, I was a fan of his movies for 20 years. So now I've met all these people, including Aubrey, and the chessboard of allies has never been stronger, you know. And now with AI coming out, there is a bridge and a capacity to where that vision was kind of out of reach, to make movies that are conscious, you know, things like Avatar and The Matrix and Harry Potter and Star Wars. They're amazing films that the mainstream loves. But what they are, they're myths. They're the Trojan horse to bring in all these philosophies and all these, the beauty of life in a way that is not force-fed or like on the nose. You tell these amazing stories that is actually, you know, we've talked about them being true stories with a capital T. Like The Matrix is a true story in the fact that the mythology behind it tells you that this world's actually an illusion, and the power of your mind, perception is reality.
Breaking out of the matrix.
Breaking out of the matrix. In Avatar, it's like, you know,
plugging into the earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you get it and you understand these mythologies. So the capacity to tell the stories on this very, very high ambitious level is very exciting for me right now. And the beautiful thing is I'm starting to meet other people who are on the same path. Teddy is one of them, you know, and South by Southwest this last week, I didn't even expect to do anything. I went to all these social circles and met powerful allies in my space, not only in the film industry, but also wanting to tell stories that haven't been told yet, I think, about plant medicines and sacred sexuality and the masculine and feminine polarities and ancient archaeology, that unique stories that, to be honest, I started thinking about these things when I was in high school. And there's been years and years and years of this just building up. And now, also thanks to ChatGPT being a writing assistant, I'm able to put in this massive weight of ideas into a container that I'm able to think as fast as the computer and to say no to so many social events, to really create the space for my Dharma. It's the most important thing for me. And but also knowing that I have the allies now.
Yes.
It's fucking exciting, Zoe.
It's so exciting.
It's really exciting now, and it's the most exciting thing going on for me right now. And recently there's a discovery that under the pyramid that they found through the SAR, subsonic, like topography, that there's actually massive pillars in this giant chamber underneath the pyramid. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. Whether it's true or not, or whether there's more studies, these are things that have been written into my script, the halls of a mentee that Edgar Casey talked about. So what's interesting, and what I'm finding, and I'll end with this, is that the more I write things, the more they start manifesting in my life. Like I'll write about a character, and then a month later, I'm meeting someone that is that character. And I get goosebumps because it feels like, this is bigger, Derek, and your life had to shatter, and it had to come here for you to tell these very important stories for the collective. And these people and these things are going to feel like I wrote about them, but I actually wrote a story, and now they're showing up. You wrote them
into your story through the story you're writing.
Yeah, life imitating art at the highest level. So it's very exciting, but there's a tremendous amount of discipline and sustained mastery and focus and production that I have to do in order to do that. We were laughing earlier about, like, there's just so much that goes on in Austin. There's so many beautiful people. The community here is unparalleled, and I think we're all here for a very
particular
very
reason.
Interesting.
Well, what I've also observed and what I feel is that there's been we've had to calibrate through being shattered, through all the things that we have experienced, through the dharmic North Star trajectory, right? To even hear the bat call to be here right now, or to even feel Austin with these open arms like a mama, right? And whatever level of work we've done on ourselves is the level of openness and embrace that we're going to feel while we're here. And then we're going to magnetize, because it feels like there's a distillation of our potency here. So other potent magnets and archetypes and characters find you, and you find each other, and it's very cosmic. And something I've been saying a lot lately is we are dreaming the ancient future awake.
Oof, say it one more time, please.
We are dreaming the ancient future awake.
That's profound.
So through our devotion, through our discernment, through the calibration to Dharma, through really anchoring into the prayer of this podcast, the better it gets, the better it gets. And your story even being a real-time example of how much better it's gotten to get.
How much magical can today be?
How magical can it be? Because I've gone through the hero-heroine's journey to get to this space in the mythological arc line where I can actually dream the new world awake.
Wow.
And I can actually assume my position in the stewardship of what Earth gets to be, this utopia. I mean, this even kind of represents it a little bit.
Yeah,
like this.
It is symbolic of that, precisely.
Yeah, and like Eden and utopia on the planet. But the only way we can actually experience that is through frequency, is through our vibratory, resonance. And that's how we're able to be in a space like this and feel the way in which we can pollinate it, and the way in which we're being invited into our artistry and mastery.
Wow.
But that discernment piece, when you're devoted to your Dharma, is huge.
I think so. I think that is the thing. And 2 notes. One is, it really is quite remarkable what's going on in Austin right now, because it feels like this vortex of energy. And then from a scientific standpoint, we talk about the immense amount of limestone underneath Austin, and Barton Springs is like a cenote. But what's crazy about coming here, because I didn't expect to be here at all, but I feel like weekly there's powerful people moving here, and how it's almost comical how everyone kind of knows everyone, and it's like, oh wait, you know this person, you know that person, we know together. And so many people are moving here at this time and space that it has to be acknowledged that something massive is going on.
Something massive is
and
happening.
I don't know what it is exactly, but dreaming the awakened future, the ancient awakened future is definitely, I love how you said that, because that's what it is. I don't know what it is, but I know what it feels like.
Right.
And it feels very poignant and very important and very exciting to be here in this time and place. The second part is, and I've experienced this, but do you feel that there is a fear to step into the greatness from people or yourself, or like it's the ambition is so massive and so big that sometimes do you feel that we have a fear of stepping into our greatness?
Absolutely. It's the same piece around love, the fear around giving and receiving the magnitude of love that we are capable of because of the what comes with that, or the possible consequences that come with it. Same with the stepping into our greatness. It's the level of responsibility, of ownership, of, because when you step into those greater and greater levels, you are expanding what we were talking about earlier, your capacity to hold greater and greater levels, which requires discernment or integrity if you want to move in a right way, in a good, rightful way, And so the piece that I offer around this always is our relationship with God, right? And our relationship with prayer, and our relationship with, okay, can we walk in Godfidence, right? Not even confidence.
I felt that in my body.
Godfidence. If you're walking Godfidence like you did, you allowed yourself to get shattered. Well, I mean, you were pushed into it, but you allowed yourself to give yourself to the shattering and to feel all of it. And in feeling all of it and into dying to your smaller self, you were able to be moved by something much larger and greater than yourself to the next level. So it is that faith and that surrender, and surrender is ultimately non-resistance. So if you're in non-resistance to the magic that wants to move through you and as you and for you, then you're just going to continue to open to it. But again, I think it's this piece around non-expectation, non-attachment. And I always say, write it down and watch it happen. Because there's an ideomotor response similar to you writing your stories, to 100%. Us writing down what is our new story. Something that I'm doing every day, and I actually took all the women in my membership through this in the beginning of the year, is creating your new reality, working with ChatGPT, and then I voice recorded it. So it's in my voice, and I listen to it in the 30 minutes when I wake up, because that's when the subconscious mind's the most suggestible.
That's huge.
And that's when we can program the mind, and it's in my voice. So I'm telling myself the new story, but I'm also leaving so much room for magic and mysticism and God to work whatever's there. But I feel like our desires are gateways and breadcrumbs to the Dharma and to what we're here to anchor.
100%. The very fact of having that desire means that it is attainable in this reality. That is such a huge, well, first off, the wisdom you just dropped in that last parable was fucking amazing. That is a modality I never even heard or thought of, to record your voice claiming what it is as if it's already done.
I just literally had the download to do that.
That's huge.
Sat and did it, and I was in the whole, because it's a ritual. When you tap out of linearity, right, which is masculine, physical, time, space, particle, density, and you can tune into the timeless non-linearity
where everything is possible.
Everything's possible, the quantum field, which can be more feminine, ethereal domain.
100%.
And you pause the matrix. Literally, as I'm doing this, all of a sudden someone reaches out to me that lives in Australia, that's visiting in Austin in the moment I'm writing about the trajectory of podcasting. And he's like, hey, I just randomly found you on Instagram, and I'm in Austin, recording with a bunch of podcasters. Do you want to come to the studio and record with me? And I get there, and he's already done all his research. He's listened to my podcast. He's gives me full queen treatment, and I got to just let the transmission come through. The episode is potent. After that, a sister in the UK reaches out to me to be on her Wet and Worthy Woman podcast. We so it was this global kind of, because I opened my field to it.
Yeah, because there's no limits in the quantum.
No limits in the quantum. This is why I have a course called Quantum Flirtation.
Oof.
Flirting with the quantum field of limitless.
How many courses do you have?
I have quite a few.
Good. We need more.
Yeah.
Bring it.
And as I'm birthing it, I'm being taken through the quantum flirtation. So literally it was how I manifested my dream car that's been on my vision board for 3 years. It's how I, was able to lock into this grid of so much more magic, right? Because when we're writing a story, a movie, we're offering a course, we're being the receptacle for God to impregnate us with the vision. when we bring it forward, we are being created by the creation, and then our life gets to imitate it, right? Because it's so much more magical than we've been programmed to believe it is.
It is.
So
we forget.
We forget. And when we tune out of the news, the media that's being, it's like we're being hypnotized by media and
100%.
all of these things that we don't even question. This is why the unicorns, the sacred rebels, the black sheeps are anchoring this through media, through storytelling, through ritual theater, prayer formance, rewriting stories, the revival of the priestess, the revival of the king, the kingdom building, the kingdom merging. And I feel like so much of that's happening in Austin. It feels like the pulse, the heartbeat for the new wave.
It really feels that way.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you learn more as you teach?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember who said this, but it's like if you want to learn something, read about it. If you want to master it, teach about it.
I've heard that too.
So,
and we're, what's beautiful about these podcasts and what we're doing now is like for us, we've been fortunate enough to learn these things and they've worked for us in our lives. So we're able to talk about them and teach them. And what I feel with manifesting when people are in like a slump, and this actually goes for me too, it's a reminder like how much amazing, unpredictable shit have you manifested? Like pure miraculous magic that's happened to you. And we somehow like, we've done it many, many times. We forget that we have the power sometimes to do that. And what's come up for me is I think like when you talk about your courses, you're like, okay, I got to teach this, but like the quantum thing is happening as you're teaching it, and then you manifest a car or you manifest your soulmate or whatever it is. And what I'm finding in my scripts is like, how do I write my characters into a situation that I don't know how to get out of? Like, I don't know how they're going to get out of it. So I write them into the situation. It's where I'm actually the captive audience of like, just give them the most difficult possible thing and then allow them as characters to become almost real and to work their way through it, and that's been like kind of the fun of creating. And then to see that, like, as I create these stories, it pour into my life.
Right.
It's like my stories from my life pour into the script, and then the script actually affects my life.
Yeah. Well, because it's all art.
It's all art.
You're co-creating with capital C creator.
Oof.
Right? And you're being created by the creation, but it's about having the willingness to actually move with the current of the creation, to be transformed into who you've always been destined to be, and then to allow that creation to ripple into the collective in the ways that only you can ripple it.
Yeah.
But it takes that courage, and it takes that confidence, and it takes that willingness to meet the magic of the unpredictable. And for anyone right now who's in that slump or in that dark night, something I want to offer is open yourself to the unpredictable and follow the breadcrumbs out of your comfort zone.
Beautiful.
Take contrary action, because anytime I've been in a dark night, and it sounds like you as well, it's been about being open to the breadcrumbs that will lead you through the transformative process that will take you to the other side. But you cannot possibly predict what those breadcrumbs are, or else you're not going to meet the people and the characters in your storyline of your own lived movie that are going to take you through that whole hero's journey, right? And I think where a lot of people get stuck is they would stay in San Diego, or they'll stay in what's familiar and what's comfortable. They'll continue hanging out in peer groups and communities and getting involved in relationships that are so life draining and soul sucking, and working these jobs versus working with creation, working with magic, right? And
working with the big boss.
Working with the big boss, right? And going, okay, show me what's next. God, please show me how good it can get. And please make me the person you would have me be, and lead me to where I need to go next and the people that I need to meet next. And then at some point, you develop such a body of faith in the miraculous that you can then serve. And in serving, you are then served.
Yeah, I don't believe in miracles. I rely on miracles.
I would say it's about becoming the living miracle. And then you're just a natural magnet to them, because you're going to spaces and you're offering your best.
That's it.
Wherever you are, that's your ministry. If a door needs to be held open, if someone's struggling, like, you're tracking, okay, why did God send me to this room?
Why am I in this space?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does this mean? How can I show up through God?
Yeah.
How can I be the most godly in this moment? And, it is direct connection to love.
Exactly.
God is love, and love is God in that sense. So, So is this some of the stuff you put into that thing you wrote, you spoke to yourself in the morning?
I love how the interview switched. It feels good.
Good. You have so much to share, and I'm so curious in your journey.
That, some of which, so what I used to do with manifestation is I felt like I knew what I wanted, and I think that there's a power and an art to specificity when you're manifesting.
It
right?
has to be very, yes.
Yes.
You have to feel it as if it's already done.
Exactly.
Not
Feel
only,
it as if
not
it's
only
already
think
done.
it, but you have to feel. Like if you want to buy that Lamborghini, what does the leather smell like on the seat?
Yeah, and how can you familiarize yourself with it in as many ways as possible? I know like a lot of manifestation coaches talk about this, but I had the white Tesla Model 3 with black interior on my vision board for 3 years, but the process was, so many people get fixated on the obsession with having the thing, the man, the partner, the car, the house, and really the practice
inevitable.
is to fully, like, sometimes we convince ourselves we've let it go, but then we find that we're still talking about it. We're still measuring ourselves against not having it. We're still perpetuating the lack and the scarcity of it. So the art is to become so full on love, God, self, the beauty of the abundance that's here, and focusing on that actively. If you're in a neighborhood and there's trash on the street, okay, are you focusing on the fact that people suck and they litter and that there's trash, or are you picking it up and focusing on the bounty of beautiful flowers everywhere, right? And it's like day to day embodying that abundance, and then knowing that in due time you will be resourced with exactly what you need. And especially if you're miracle minded and you're a miracle worker, God's going to keep dripping miracles into the field so that you can teach and preach from that space of lived experience and then continue to experience the bounty. Right? So yes, a little bit of that, but a lot of room for God.
A lot of room for God.
Yeah,
that is always a good reminder, let go and let God, and it's also like when you talk about manifesting, I think what's also very important from what you were stating is to, set it and forget it.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, you set the intention, you're very clear about what you want, and there's this like, instead of speaking like, I actually really, really want this partner, it's like, God, I'm so grateful for the partner that I have, but it like, you set it and forget it, and then it works in the behind the back of the scenes, it works for you.
Totally.
But it usually takes you to a place that is, you talked about contrary, it takes you to a place where it's not a linear set path that's so easy and clear. It's like, let me destroy this to create the room. Nature abhors a vacuum. So when something so devastating happens, like, I think the beauty, if you can, through the grief, is to realize like there's this massive amount of space opening up for something equal or bigger to come in. In the past, what you're doing is, if you, like you said, if you keep living in the same place and keep having the same people around you, you're blocking all this newness. You're blocking the possibility.
Yeah, right. It's this or something better.
This or something better.
And continuing to like live by that. That's why I named the podcast The Better It Gets, because that was my anchor mantra for 5 years.
Wow.
And through Teddy and I's separation, which was one of my initiations of shattering. I've had quite a few, but
100%.
That one was like,
it really got you.
Yeah, it was gut wrenching, soul excruciation, yearning. And it's where I say I died to my small self, and I really was born into my dharma. And it was exactly that. It's this or something better. And it's not just saying it. It's like dropping it into your heart and wholeheartedly believing it, which requires that faith, that belief in something you cannot see yet, but you can feel in your body. And if you can program your somatics to really believe that it gets to keep getting better and better, that God wants what's best for us, that it gets to be utopian, right? And that we get to be vessels for that, then we can throw ourselves into the fire and trust that anything that's being burned off isn't truth.
Isn't.
And if it's not true, we don't want to be living it.
No, and not to feel this, like there's this story that is perpetuated, I think, in social cultural circles and in the news, that you're not enough. You're not good enough. You need this pill. You need this house. You need this to give you value. And that's not what it is. It's more like knowing without guilt that you're deserving of anything your imagination has the capacity to come up with.
Because you are a child of the divine.
Boom. Yes.
That was my biggest download during lockdown, when I was quantumly expanding and setting the tone and the foundation for everything I'm living now, like literal answered prayers now. But something I've been dropping into a lot is I did the legwork over the past 10 years to be here now, like started learning manifestation at 16. So remembering also, for anyone listening, it's suspending time And like you said, not attaching your worth to whether you have this thing or not, because it's not about how your life looks. It's about how it feels. And when you can get into that feeling space, your life will start to reflect it in the ways that are true and authentic for you. And then you get to become a living embodiment of what's possible. I say we are here to co-create our very own fairy tale.
Yes.
And if you're co-creating your own fairy tale and you're broadcasting that frequency out into the matrix and people are receiving the codes of your embodied experience of it, that's how we're going to create the new earth.
100%.
Be devoted to co-creating your own fucking living fairy tale.
Yeah.
And know that that's enough. That's the ripple effect.
It is a ripple effect. The sheer fact that we are here talking through technology to an unlimited amount of people in the audience, that we have these bodies, that we can have all these sensations, it's such a miracle. And it's such a gift, and it is so fucking unique. The sheer statistics about life on Earth and how the atmosphere protects us from the sun, and tiny variances in anything, and none of this would exist at all. So recognizing that, and so why are you going to belittle yourself? Why, as a divine child of God, with that tremendous amount of power and responsibility, why are you going to get caught up with finding external validation and happiness? Like that person needs to complete me, or that the money needs to complete me. Happiness is an action. Happiness has to be found internal and instead of external. So like you said, just being, grateful and surrendering and to, like you said, recognize, instead of looking at the trash, you look at the flowers. I have a tattoo, it's perception is reality, and it's in Sanskrit, and that is actually what that is. It's like what we perceive is actually our reality, because we don't know why we're here. I mean, we can feel it, but what is the truth of purpose of life? At the end of the day, no one has all the fucking answers. Science wants to tell you how it is. Politicians wants to tell you how it is. Religion. But at the end of the day, your truth is how you perceive life. And if you perceive it in a way that is loving and giving and caring, and you have the capacity and the magic, if it's magical with a K, you can create, like you said, heaven on earth.
Yeah, so beautiful. It reminds me of Marianne Williamson, one of my, she's my, been my role model for the past over a decade. And she's like, the real miracle is a shift in perception. Being a miracle worker is consistently being devoted to shifting your perception to see life through love's eyes, right? And that shift in perception can be applied to like the smallest things. I was on a panel recently, and as I'm sitting on this panel, there are these massive hornets, and I'm freaking out. I'm like sitting there like, okay, it's my turn to talk. I don't want to get up and embarrass myself and like run away. Like we're all talking about regenerative culture, and I'm scared of hornets. Yeah. And then I was like, and something shifted, and I'm like, they're protecting us.
Oh,
and I was like,
the shift in perception.
The shift in perception.
Yes.
And then it felt more miraculous. I was like, oh, they're protecting us, and it's like, how can we shift our perception day to day, right? About whatever it is that we're scared of, or whatever's standing in our way or holding us back, to be something that's actually here to serve or protect us or help take us. I don't know why that piece came through. It was like,
no, it lands and it resonates, because like hornets are nasty, but they're also a god.
Right, there is all sacred.
It's all sacred. So yeah, if you worship nothing, then everything is sacred. But if you worship everything, then nothing is sacred. So knowing that that everything is God, essentially. I had a recent experience. I go get these massages from a guy named Carl, and he is a big black dude, and he's got these massive hands, and it is painful, Zoe. It is. The first time I went in, I was like, I don't know if I can even finish. But I'm not fucking tapping out. Like I'd rather pass out than tap out to the pain. But I remember how I felt after, and I was like, okay, like I feel fucking great. So I kept going back. And each time it was like pushing. I think this is also the healing powers of BDSM, and why people are finding out that through bondage and pain and being like restrained, for people that are always controlling everything, that lack of control actually makes them feel like present and blissful. And push the edge of sensation as well. Yeah, pushing the edge of the sensation, exactly what it is. So the last time I went in, I actually got, kind of stoned before, and I was receiving the massage, and I had an injury that he was working on, and it was excruciatingly painful. But then I started telling myself, and this is about, you're talking about sensations and perception of that, I was like, okay, is it damaging me? No. He's actually healing you. He's actually bringing out all the tight muscles and tendons that aren't working right. So I go, okay, so what is pain? okay, the pain is just signals to the brain, just like a cold plunge. It's the
Sensation.
same sensation, it's the same modality. So I'm like, okay, it's not hurting me. These are just signals to the brain. So can I make friends with pain? And I started to go through this process, Zoe, where like, I could feel the pain, but it wasn't this alarm system going off my brain. I knew it was just signals, and I wasn't being damaged. Like getting a tattoo, it's kind of the same
So
thing.
that's what I used to apply when I got a tattoo.
Same.
Is I was going through a process where I was shown through my menstrual cramps that it wasn't pain, it was sensation, it was my womb talking to me. So I re-templatized my relationship with pain. And even when I got this and I could feel just a little bit of it, I'm like, it's not pain.
Yes.
It's sensation. However, knowing when you're actually in pain is really important.
Yeah,
so
if
that
it's damaging you.
If it's damaging you and you're...
It's a little different because
Yeah.
then it's your body's alarm system saying like, hey, yo, something's up.
Right.
So in this particular case, I'm able to sit with pain knowing it's not damaging. And then the next level I took was like, well, can I turn that pain into pleasure? You know, transmute, like telling the brain, like the mind control of like having that moment and telling myself like, can I do that? And I did. And it was like, it was a hell of a ceremony, you know?
Beautiful. I mean, what you just spoke into is ceremonializing your life experience.
Oof.
And you can do that in any moment. Like,
That's huge, actually.
I think massage is a profound portal for epiphany. Because
I love that. That's exactly.
I
yeah.
just had one the other day, and for women, I think it's important when we go to get massages, sometimes, at least for me in my experience, I would be getting massaged in a way that was genuinely just uncomfortable or tedious, and she's not working on other parts of my body, and I wouldn't speak up for what I needed or wanted. And so lately it's been an experience where I'm actually speaking to it.
Yeah.
And then a part of me is like, oh no, did I hurt her feelings? And I'm like, wait, no, she's working on my body and I'm paying her.
Exactly.
You know, like,
How much better can this massage
right,
get?
and I can still be really kind with the way that I say it, you
That's
know?
it.
And in being able to redirect her, there was a moment where I was like, oh no, like she feels like because I kind of did it quite a bit. And then all of a sudden I was able to fall into bliss and recognize, she'd be like, relax here. I'm like, oh, I'm not relaxing.
So
I'm not receiving here.
Boom.
Wow, how many layers deeper, you know? And so those,
Yeah.
I think massage, I just shared about this in my membership, is a powerful place
It is.
to practice. How am I receiving?
Yeah.
What's my sensation? Someone's hands on my body,
Yeah,
you know?
the sacred ask, the sacred no.
Right. Being
but
able
also
to speak to what you want.
speak to it, but also you took responsibility for your part in that.
Right.
This reminds me of orgasm. You know, it's like Kim Anami says, like every person's orgasm is their responsibility. You know, like, and that's, I guess, you know, what comes up for me as a pleasure dom, it's like, yeah, I want them to climax, and I can do all the things, but if the woman's not telling me what hurts, what isn't, what's like
Or if she
harder,
doesn't
softer,
want it.
faster, or if she doesn't want it.
Yeah.
You know, the faking of the orgasm shouldn't be a thing. You know, it should be like, what is it? And that's when you speak about the boundaries and the desires and why are we doing this dance? And it comes back, like you said, ceremonializing. And that's really huge because I've been hanging out with this woman for the last 5 months, and she's incredible because what she's taught me is every time that we have tobacco or a meal or a simple drink or a simple sunset, she's so intentional. She sits and she prays, and it wasn't performative at all. I realized like, wow, like she actually is intentional about all these things.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding out now by spending so much time with her is that ceremonializing of all these things.
Yes.
And it's like, if you're in presence and you're just grateful and you really think like, God, it really is a miracle in this very moment that, you know, grateful for this conversation, grateful for this friendship.
This whole
and
setup,
the
you
wisdom.
set this whole thing up where we get to
It's a
do this.
ceremony.
It's and then when you count your blessings, they multiply. But I always say commune before you consume.
I love that.
I don't want to say I always say that. I came up with that like 2 months ago. But,
Yeah, but now you
commune,
do.
Commune
Yeah.
before you consume. So like when you're drinking your morning beverage, whether it's a cacao or a coffee or a green tea, can you just be present with it and blow your intentions into it and feel every sensation as you drink it? Again, it's about sensitizing yourself to the subtleties and to the miraculous and letting the miraculous know that you fucking see it.
Yes.
And you're dancing with it.
More please.
More please.
More
Let's
dance.
keep flirting and courting and making love. That's where I love to apply Tantra and kink to life. Can you take life as your lover? And when you feel a little discombobulated, can you stop everything and really tune in and go, how can I take this present moment as my lover? Oof. Maybe it's taking off all my clothes right now and dancing to like 90s music, right? Like, what is it? Maybe it's like pressing myself onto like the fuzzy rug so I can resensitize myself to sensation, and then going and making myself some mac and cheese. This is not what I do. I don't know why this is coming up.
Well, it's really beautiful. It's like, am I a turn on for God, and is God a turn on for me? Like, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And if you're like you said, bringing the tantric and bringing the erotic into life, everything can be erotic in that way. It's not sexual, it's erotic.
That's the erotic innocence.
The erotic innocence
is not having it be some kind of over-sexualized thing, but allowing it to be the beauty of your exchange with life force itself.
Oh my God, because then you take it from the carnal and you put it into the spiritual.
Yeah.
And then you can enjoy all of it.
Right. That's why I always say life is such a flirt. The universe is such a flirt.
When you flirt with the universe, it'll flirt back.
It flirts back. That's why. But I always say life is such a flirt. Pay attention. Because if someone's courting you or flirting with you and you're not paying attention to it, they're going to stop.
Exactly.
You're not going to actually be in this exchange, right? So if you can take life and the universe as your lover and see the flirts through the repetitive numbers and the people and the things that repeat in your field, and you continue to follow that, you're going to find your sweet spot. But yeah, I love this conversation with you.
Yeah, here's the finding the sweet spots together. Yeah.
Thank you for diving into all the sweetness today. And I feel like it's a good place to start closing it up. But I just want to ask you, Derek, is there anything else that you want to share in this space since we've opened this little nectar pot before we close out?
Recognize your turn on. Don't be shamed by it. Go after the things you love. Visualize them as if they were already done, and eat mushrooms. Have lots of sex. Enjoy life.
What is it? Plant medicine, or sex, plant medicine, and bass music instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I like that. That is the new sober.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tantra, psychedelics, and bass music. That's our new sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
And for the men listening, allow your savage gentleman to come forward. The women are yearning for it, and to give, so they're able to receive.
Thank you for embodying that and transmitting that so beautifully, and dropping all your Derek wisdom into this space, and all the ways in which this prayer has been so active in your life that it really does get to keep getting better and better. And I'm excited to keep experiencing how much better it gets alongside you.
Yes. Let's keep doing this dance together. And thank you so much for having me and open up a space so we can talk about these things and sharing so much of your wisdom. And like, we're homies, but it also to hear so much of your wisdom is not something that we can normally just do in the default world.
Right.
To have this moment of time this ceremony that we share together, there's a lot that resonates. It reminds me of how to, continue walking and fine-tuning this path.
And if you also just want to speak into this painting really quick.
Yeah, this is a painting by Hana Yata, and all her art is, this is in this studio that we have here, and it's just this beautiful psychedelic, cornucopia of love and femininity, the cosmoerotic universe, and a vision of a future that we are all feeling, and in this moment that we're, like you said, dreaming the ancient future right now, and that is this looks like a symbolic representation of that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It feels so symbolic of literally everything we just talked about.
Very much so. Yeah, I think that it helped set that energy in that container. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Derek. Where can people find you if they want to connect about conscious media or masculinity or the things that you've been sharing with me secretly that are brewing behind the scenes?
I guess the easiest way to find me is Shamanic Samurai on Instagram. That is something that I was nomadic perceptions for like 12 years and realized I wasn't really living a nomadic life anymore. And there was something really beautiful about the Bushido path of the samurai, of loyalty and discernment and meticulousness, and but at the same time the shamanic path of bringing creativity and art, being the gap between the astral realm and the physicality, bringing dreams into motion. And so shamanic_samurai on Instagram.
Shamanic Samurai. Thank you. And we'll see you next week for the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Mwah.
Thank you so much, y'all. Much love.